You've been out on track, obviously a racetrack that you know well, that you've had success on. What are your thoughts from the first session?
Yeah, it's well, for one, it's good to be back in an IndyCar. It's been a little while, so it's nice to be out running, and obviously back here in Phoenix. You know, fond memories from last year. It's always good to be back at a track that you won at. For us, big changes, you know, in the off season, and the first, well, it's the second time in the Honda Power car. So first time on a short oval, which, you know, as we know, is maybe not the best package that they have, but all in all, it ran fairly smoothly. We didn't do new tires. It looked like a bunch of people did new tires at the end, and you know, did a couple of different aero adjustments to try and, you know, get an idea on you know, some of the data that we've been looking at through the off season. But yeah, as for right now, you know, the engine feels really good, and, you know, lap times, I thought for what we were doing were actually were fairly decent. So you know, it's always hard to tell in preseason testing, especially with manufacturers, you know, how turned up they are. And we'll just have to see how it plays out once we come back here for the race. But for us in our testing program today, the first session went fairly well.
What is going through that transition like when you're switching manufacturers over an off season and these first initial tests? What are the challenges as a driver to adjust to those changes?
You know, typically they're the same as far as, you know, when you do make these changes. You know, I think it's definitely a polar opposite or polar difference between how, you know, these two manufacturers at least run their programs. So, you know, for me, it's a lot of familiar faces. You know, as a team, we've achieved a lot with HPD and Honda. You know, so it's nice to be back, you know, working with a lot of those people. You know, and as I said, they run the program vastly different. So I think the program itself actually fits our team a little bit better. But, you know, we'll have to see. Obviously, you know, performance is what you really look for. I think this year is probably the hardest time to do that transition, just for the sheer fact that, you know, we almost have no off-season testing with 4 days now. In a stagnant year of development, you know, ourselves and AJ Foyt are probably the only two teams that are on a very steep learning curve. Trying to figure out what the other side's had for 2 years. So, you know, there's a lot to learn, a lot to take in. It's exciting. It's a new challenge, and you know, definitely happy to be, you know, behind the number 9, and you know, we'll see what we can get this season.
We'll open up for questions, starting with Michael and then Bruce.
Hi, Scott. Michael Knight of the Arizona Republic. Going back to your victory here last year, you led the last 155 laps. Post-race, most of the drivers talked about hard to pass, too much downforce, and you were pretty confident in your statement saying that for the first year you thought things went pretty well, but that IndyCar would be better here the second time around in terms of the entertainment value of the race. With the aero kit freeze and so forth, do you still remain confident of the showbiz value of the race?
I think it'll be better. You know, it's always a fine line and something that's very tough to achieve, and takes, you know, multiple attempts, I think, at doing it. You know, right now is a very tough time too, because this is a non-development year and everything has stayed stagnant. It's very hard for Honda to change any of, you know, the parameters, because this is, you know, basically nothing's meant to change. So, you know, I expect larger changes for next year when we go to a you know, a single aero kit configuration, and because of that sheer fact that IndyCar will have the power over the whole car. You know, right now it's very tough because you know, the parameters that they use, it's very difficult to make an equal change for both. So there has been some smaller changes. You know, obviously I think Firestone brought a different tire here too. You know, right now for me it actually felt like the track grip was up over last year, so that's kind of interesting. Not sure why we're kind of getting that read yet, but to be honest, right now I couldn't tell you either way. You know, we're doing all we can as the drivers to make the show better, and you know, we have to wait and see whether it turns out that way.
Scott, could you tell me, do you feel the drivers and the IndyCar organization realize the importance of improving the showbiz value of the race in terms of trying to build the audience in this market of a second year of what may only be a 3-year window to succeed?
Yeah, it's paramount. And there has been some heavy discussions, and not just for here, but for a lot of different places. But there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. It's never that easy just to make one change. In that moment, you're going to annoy or anger somebody. So, I think IndyCar in the off season have done an amazing job of going to these tracks, testing configurations. It might not be as the changes as quick as we would like to see, but there's also got to be a methodical change period for both, and I find next year it's going to be a lot easier to make these changes. It's just right now in a stagnant year, it's kind of tough, but still in the off season they've made some pretty good tests and adjustments, and are working in the right direction. We'll just have to see how it works out.
Bruce?
How temporary is the all-white driver's suit?
You don't like it?
I'm just saying, how temporary is it until you start having some signage on
That's
it?
above my pay grade, man.
And other than, I think a couple of years ago when you had a white target driving suit, I believe in Indy or somewhere like that, it's always been red. When is the last time that you've had a non-red driver's suit other than the aforementioned time?
Well, it's, if you count paint schemes and stuff, there's been plenty of different colors and white ones. Not this plain, but it'll change before the season starts.
Mike?
Mike Hembry from Auto Week. Scott, I guess it would be logical to expect that you guys, with the changes, would be better in the second half of the season with some experience and work and what have you. Are you confident you can come out of the gate pretty quick and do well in these first few races?
That's the goal. Whether it plays out that way, we'll have to wait and see. But there's when you're racing a competitor, you have a pretty good understanding of through analysis of where they stand, where they struggle, where you're better, et cetera, et cetera. So going into this, we kind of knew the areas that we were probably going to be on the back foot in some, and better at others. So I think the off season for us, to be honest, has been a really good reset. With the manufacturer, I think last year as a team we made a lot of mistakes, a lot of small mistakes that we didn't get the small things right first. Which gave us ultimately the worst championship that we've had in probably about 12 years. So, we had great speed throughout the year, but finishing sixth in the championship is not something that we take too lightly. So, it's, as I said, it's really hard to gauge. There's areas that we think we're going to be fast and good, but there's areas that as a team we needed to work on, and two, with the manufacturer changing configuration, we might not be at best as well.
Patrick, did you have a question? Nope. Tony?
Scott, how do you like the fact that there's the same four drivers year to year, whereas does that help to have that bit of continuity at least when there's been one or two changes off and on in recent years?
Yeah, it's always nice to to have the same lineup, and I think with TK, it's been good to work with him for the last 2 seasons and going into a third, and that kind of longevity between him and myself, at least, I think you start to get some good patterns of if the 9 car does one thing, the 10 should do this, etc., which is something that we had a really good sort of platform with Dario when he was in the 10 car. And then, with Max, his second year, expect to see some big improvements, and I think he's starting to get the flow of it. I think he was a little unsure of the street courses in IndyCar for a while, but is definitely taking a liking to them those now, and Charlie definitely was strong throughout last year too. So, yeah, I guess short answer is yeah, it's nice to have the same lineup.
Bruce?
The track will have the same layout next year's race, but for the IndyCar race in 2019, everything's going to change with the start-finish line over there coming out of Turn 2. How much is that going to really change the style of restarts at this track?
Yeah, it'll be quite interesting, just because of trying to, obviously where the restart zone and stuff is going to be, could be, pretty tough, but, could also open it up a little bit instead of all barreling down into turn one. So, you know, I don't know. The short answer to that is, yeah, I'm not really sure how it's going to change our racing, whether it will at all. But yeah, it's, you know, I think it's definitely exciting to see, you know, Phoenix International putting in all the money and you know, going through the transition, updating the facility. Definitely, you know, everybody's excited about that.
How badly do you feel that the facility needed to be upgraded?
No, I think it wasn't, you know. Depends on some of the other places too, you know. But no, I think, you know, this facility, you know, obviously much hasn't changed since I first came here in maybe 2000 or something, so, or 97, maybe 98. So it's good to see it going through an update.